Conversation continues. Sanford Nowlin is the editor-in-chief of the San Antonio Current. Antonio Guillen, general assignment reporter for Univision Channel 41. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Sanford, you have done outstanding reporting in the last week about some of the environmental issues being caused by power plants in this area and how they might be polluting our water sources. Talk a little bit about what you've learned.
Yeah, there was a group of environmental organizations that obtained data on these monitoring wells that the federal government has started to require coal plants to put on their site to basically see if the coal ash that is produced during the energy production process is seeping into the groundwater. And they found that at all 16 Texas sites where there are coal plants with coal ash that are reporting, there was evidence of contamination, and that includes the two plants south of San Antonio. And one of those, the Dealey plant, has been closed. The other one's still in operation. And the thing about the Dealey plant is, even though it's not producing energy anymore, that coal ash is still being stored on site. And I think it's important to their point of view to basically try to figure out what the lasting implications are for dumping this stuff, even if it gets hauled off site or even if it gets recycled. I mean, it's been there for a long time, sometimes decades basically, and it's every bit as toxic as the other chemicals used in heavy manufacturing.
Should we be worried about this being in our water?
Well, I don't know that we have evidence that it sort of leached into the waterways that are next to these plants, but there is reason to be concerned if it's in the groundwater, if it's seeping out of these lagoons, and if it's seeping out of these storage bins, which are essentially basically just kind of holes dug in the ground, then it could be just a matter of time before it ends up in a lake where somebody's swimming or fishing or going for recreation.
We remember, I'm sorry to intervene, but I remember the situation, you guys remember the Alamodome dirt. Mm-hmm. And probably we have something, again, I mean, it should be worried because do we have a Flint, Michigan situation over here?
Say it again?
Flint,
Flint, Michigan.
Yes,
yeah, I don't know that we have the potential for it to be contaminating our contaminating our water supply on that scale, but I do think it's of concern. I mean, because there are toxins and heavy metals in this waste that could all of these coal plants, or most of the coal plants, are basically located on lakes or reservoirs because they need that stuff for the process. So there is concern that it could get into those waters.
Both you gentlemen were at Plaza Guadalupe a couple of weeks ago when former Mayor Castro announced his campaign for president. Mayor Castro announces at Plaza Guadalupe, Kamala Harris announces on Good Morning America. Is Mayor Castro, is he firmly entrenched in the second or maybe even the third layer of presidential hopefuls in the Democratic Party? And in your opinion, how does he rise at this point?
Well, I think he's made a smart move thus far by getting in early. And we saw him even before making it official. He was meeting with donors. He was going out and talking to some of the important folks that can help fund a campaign like his, including one of the biggest donors to the Beto O'Rourke campaign, which is either smart because he's latching onto somebody he knows has a proven track record, or taking that asset away from Beto should he decide to run. And he's been out there. He's been to Puerto Rico. He's been to New Hampshire. Within days of announcing. So I think getting out there early is smart. And I think the other thing we have to consider too is he's also a relatively young candidate. And this, I don't think you could ask him this and get this answer from him, but this may well be a practice run. He may see this as, I may not get it this time, but there's a second and then there's a third. And maybe he gets a VP nod or something like that.
Antonio, he's the only Hispanic candidate in the race, the only serious Mexican-American candidate. That is a growing population, an increasingly important population in the Democratic Party. How much will that help him, do you think, as he tries to make this run?
The moment I still believe it's a sleeping giant, which is a Hispanic population, the moment the Hispanic population wakes up and it really goes to the polls and start voting, then probably we'll be seeing a difference. Right now, Jim, to tell you the truth and be honest, I don't think Julian Castro has a definitive shot to be taken into account. What I think is a politician, as long as he's relevant and stays in the mind of people, we know now that Julian Castro is a professional politician. He won't be working a job like you and me. I don't think so. I don't think we will be seeing Julian Castro working for a company or something like that. He wants to be a professional politician for the rest of his life. So as long as he stays relevant, and being relevant means being in this race, probably he knows that he doesn't have a shot, a legitimate shot to be taken into account because we have Biden, we have Bloomberg, Kamala Harris, we have Beto O'Rourke. He hasn't decided yet, but we know that Beto O'Rourke has a more relevant political position that he has right now. But still, as he says, he's still young. He still have 20 more years ahead of him. And as long as he stays relevant in this race, as long as people listen to Julian Castro, the Castro name, for president, great. So as long as he stays relevant, I think that's why he made the move. If he wouldn't have done this, pretty soon probably nobody will remember who Julian Castro was.
It's certainly his rising star from speaking at the Democratic Convention a few years back. A lot of people, everybody talked about how he was this rising star, but that luster seemed to fade pretty quickly. You have to be out there. You have to constantly be on television, constantly be in front of people, and this is one way for him to do that.
Interesting points. Antonio Guillen, Channel 41 Univision, and Sanford Nowlin, Editor-in-Chief, San Antonio Current. Thank you very much for joining us on The Conversation Continues.